We are back answering your stimulus and tax-related questions with Mark Hensley from AARP North Carolina Triad Region, Kevin Robinson from Robinson Tax and Accounting, and Scott Braddock with Scott Braddock Financial. You can continue to text your questions to the number that's at the bottom of your screen. All right, this person is saying, is the stimulus money for number 3 based on 2019 or 2020 income? This is an interesting question because if you file differently, it can change the outcome. Mark, you want to take that one?
Yeah, so if you really, a lot could have changed in 2020. And if you had a child, if you had been counted as a dependent in 2019 and then you became an independent working person, that you would be filing taxes for 2020, get that in, because that's going to change how the IRS looks at you to determine what amount of stimulus, where you're qualified, and what amount totally you will get.
All right, this person is asking, should I expect any sort of paperwork from the IRS regarding a stimulus payment I received? Kevin?
Well, a very valid question, Tanya. The first stimulus payment last year, people should have received notice 1444B signed by then President Trump, 1444. And then the second stimulus that we just came out this year should be notice 1444B. So there's a notice coming, but does everybody get one? We've got the first one, we haven't got the second one, but they should get something showing that to coincide with the stimulus that either they got a check or a debit card or direct deposit on.
Yeah, the first stimulus, it seemed like that letter in the mail was about just 2 weeks behind the payment. This last stimulus, it's at least 3 or 4 weeks behind the payment. Scott, this person is asking, if I filed my taxes already for 2020, will my stimulus go in my bank account that I used on my return?
You know, more than likely, that's what will happen. You know, keep in mind, if you did not receive your stimulus payment and you're going to be claiming that on your return, specifically line 30, what that stimulus will do is actually increase what you're expecting back as a refund. But on the other hand there, if you owe the IRS money, it's going to go towards that debt.
All right, let's take a look at this. They're asking, what is the income limit to receive the stimulus payment? Mark?
Okay, so right now, the proposal is to mirror what we've had all along. An individual with an adjusted gross income of $75,000 or less, a married couple filing jointly, $150,000 adjusted gross income. Now, there's been some debate in Congress about lowering that threshold. At this point, it looks like it's going to stay the same. But again, we want to remind you, the decision has not been fully made. It would change the total layout of this stimulus if those income thresholds were dropped.
Okay. Kevin, this person is asking, are there tax credits for full-time employees that are mandated to work at home?
That's a good question. I am not right off the hand, and maybe Scott or Mark may be more aware of it. I'm not aware of a tax credit on that. I know there's some tax credits for people that are self-employed that were impacted by COVID. Scott, you may have more information on that.
I actually just read something on this today, and the answer is no. Now, I wish I had a better detailed explanation as to why, but the answer is simply no. There is not going to be a tax credit for those that were working at home more.
Right, because I think a lot of people thought that they might be able to write off, you know, maybe a computer that they bought or maybe an office chair that they bought, but it's not seeming like that is a possibility.
That's right.
Okay. This person is asking, if my dependent is 17 years old and in high school, will I receive the stimulus payment for him, or does it go straight to him?
So this goes back to the filing status. If this individual is being counted as a dependent by an adult, the person filing the taxes is the one that receives the payment, because the bank account information for that dependent is not set up with the Treasury and the IRS. So this would go to the tax filer, not the dependent.
Okay. And Scott, this person says, are any of the stimulus payments going to be needed to be paid back?
No, the stimulus payments, well, there is, could be an interesting situation where if a spouse had passed away and they received that stimulus check and they would have passed away during 2020. So that's an important notation there. I know with the first round, at first we were unsure, but then they came out with strict, specific instructions on how to return that money for those spouses that had passed away or individuals that had passed away. I guess it could have been a dependent as well. We have not received those instructions yet for round 2, as far as I'm aware of. But I want the other caveat here, if you will, is that if your spouse was alive, or another child, for example, that was entitled to a stimulus, and they happen to pass away in 2021, you do not have to return that. They deserve that because they were here with us during 2020.
All right. Did anybody have something else to add on that?
No, that's right. I agree with Mark. That's right. Scott, it's timing on that.
Okay. Mark, this person is asking, will SSI and Social Security folks get the 3rd stimulus check?
Okay, great question. Income is income. So it depends on that threshold. And if your income, regardless of the source, is $75,000 adjusted gross income or less, then you're eligible for a stimulus. This includes people who don't report any income. So if you're on SSI or you're on Social Security, you're typically not filing, you're not making even enough money to file taxes. But there are people that don't have a job and aren't filing taxes. They're also eligible to request a stimulus by going to irs.gov when this opens up, hopefully very soon.
Right. Okay. So that was for stimulus number 3. But if you didn't get stimulus 1 or 2, and even if you don't normally file taxes, you do want to file taxes this year, it is free e-file. The IRS is offering many different kinds of ways for you to e-file. We've got that in the 2 Wants to Know section. We'll be right back after a short break.